Folks, welcome to another episode of A Pint with Seaniebee. This one is from a country we haven't been to before. I am in Oslo in Norway, a very interesting and expensive country. We have a very interesting guest who is not fully Norwegian but lives here and has an amazing job, which she'll talk about. She is a curator, administrator, facilitator, someone who basically tries to help artists show their work as best as they can. And her name is Mei Szetu. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
So, Mei, tell me what you do for a living right now.
I think like anyone working in the arts, you have several jobs because no one job often pays all the bills. So I work in a craft gallery in Bergen, and I'm trying to invest in my own project, making some time for that.
Right.
Another job I do as well is I work as a consultant for a marine ingredients producer. But that also works into an interest I have for everything that comes out of the ocean.
Okay, well, let's come back to that one. The thing that struck me most about Norway is the size of the place when I arrived. I just didn't imagine. I was kind of hoping to go up to a place where Mei is working at the moment, which we'll talk about in a second, but it was something like a 3.5-hour flight to get up there, and I was like, what? That's like going across America. Norway's coastline is 15,000 miles, which is almost would stretch halfway around the world. Yeah. You're working in Nyksund.
My family come from Nyksund.
Okay.
I'm sixth generation Nyksund Valley, they call it. It's been inhabited since the Viking times.
Yes.
And it has a reputation for having booms and busts every 100 to 200 years. So recently, at 10th century, it was one of Norway's largest fishing ports. But then with centralization, government policy, and modern technology, it overnight became more of a ghost town.
So Nyksund is, for those of you who know Norway as a sort of a long, thin country with a sort of bell at the bottom, is right up at the very top, where you presumably get full summers, right? Where the sun doesn't go down at all.
Exactly.
What's that like?
It's amazing. It's fantastic. Do
you get cranky?
No. It's like everyone's hyperactive all summer, and then you have this wonderful hibernation period in winter where it's dark.
Northern Lights every second night sort of thing?
Not quite, but quite often. It's a beautiful place. You should definitely come and visit.
What are you doing in Nyksund?
In Nyksund, I'm restoring an old building that's about 600 square meters. It used to be an old fishing warehouse that was about to fall into the sea. It's the last building that's left that needs to be restored. Most of the other old buildings have either fallen into the ocean or then been redeveloped by people in the tourist industry.
So is it a big tourist place?
It is. There's about 30,000 tourists there, and it's only 2 very small islands with 20 inhabitants.
Really?
So it started about 15 years ago.
Right.
A lot of artists moved back to the area and gave it a new lease of life. But since then, of course, it's attracted then tourists and investors, and that's half of what my project is about. It's a conservation project. It's saving space for the creative people, because at the moment no one can afford to come and work there if you're not a rich tourist, and that's kind of killing a bit of the identity of the place.
And so the project that you're restoring is are you making it into a gallery?
I'm making it into an open workspace, so it's flexible.
Okay. All right.
Because I think the way a lot of creative people work today, you don't need the studio with this Stephanie, not that many people are painting paintings, and if anything, I'm trying to move away, or on purpose. The kind of art and the projects I like to work on are much more about collaboration, experimenting, allowing yourself to fail and just seeing what happens.
Yeah.
I think often in those uncertain moments, some of the most interesting things happen. And the North Norwegian region is very well known for these amazing landscapes, and it almost becomes a bit pornographic. Artists that come up there and they get so struck by nature that the dialogue and exchanges don't go beyond the beautiful mountains and the blue sea and the northern lights. And I think there's so many more stories that need to be told about that region. So that's why I'd like to create a space where people can come and find out about those stories and tell those stories.
This part of Norway is the Norway, I guess, that I didn't see and I hope to see. This kind of deep rock faces with beautiful inlets. Am I picturing it right up there?
It's amazing. I mean, it's even for most Norwegians, the northern region's a bit unknown. It's a bit like a Norwegian colony. White sandy beaches and turquoise seas. meadows full of flowers and all kinds of colours. So you wouldn't imagine it. And what I say to a lot of people is that at least the Vesterålen section of North Norway reminds me a lot of Borneo.
Okay.
It's got that, or at least in summer, it's got that all that sunshine. Everything grows extra big and extra green, and everything's almost luminous.
Right. I mean, nice segue there to maybe come back to Nyksund and come full circle. You mentioned Borneo. You told me before we started that you were born in Borneo.
I was actually born in London.
Oh, you're born in London. Sorry.
It's
okay.
very confusing even for myself.
So you're how many generation Nyksund?
6.
Have you still got family in Nyksund?
I do. My mother, she's a painter.
Is she? Okay. So will she be
she'll
all
be
over this project? Does she love the fact that her daughter's returned?
Yes, and we're doing a lot of it together as well.
Okay, great. So you were born in London. What was the Borneo thing you were talking about?
My father's from Borneo. He was a law student in London. I met my mother, who was an art student at Camberwell. They had me there, and then they moved to Borneo. And
famous for its orangutans.
Yes, I had an orangutan pet.
You had an orangutan pet? What was that like? A friend. What do they call them? Old man of the forest.
Yes, they're lovely. They're really funny, cheeky
and still
characters.
Endangered?
They are, unfortunately. Yeah, wildlife conservation is it's difficult. Most of the natural rainforest in Borneo has been chopped down for logging and into plantations. There are a lot of similar issues in Borneo as North Norway. They're both oil-producing regions. There's a lot of political contest about who owns the resources along the coasts.
Your first memories are of Borneo?
Yes, absolutely.
And how long did you spend there?
I was there till I was about 10 and a half.
So what was it like growing up there?
It was wild. It was fantastic. My parents they were activists, artists, and always doing projects. We had people from all over the world coming.
Is your father still with us, or is he out there? Or?
Yes, he is. He lives between Borneo and Copenhagen.
Okay.
We're all over the place.
Had you brothers and sisters, or were you?
I have one sister and 3 half brothers and sisters in Copenhagen.
Okay.
So everything's everywhere.
Yeah. So growing up in Borneo, I don't think I've ever met anyone who's grown up in Borneo. Was it a happy childhood? Paint a picture for me of what your memories are of it.
We used to live by the sea. My parents are quite individual, so they would just find a piece of land and build their own house, and we'd be playing on the beach, me and my sister, or with our orangutan.
And what about schools? Were they good schools, or did you?
Well, I wasn't sent to school till I was a lot older.
Really?
My parents had a philosophy.
They self-taught you?
Well, they said, school of life is a pretty good place to
So
start
what age
out.
were you when you went to school?
I was 7 when I first went to school.
Wow, okay.
And my first lesson was spelling test.
And?
It was horrendous. I couldn't spell. I couldn't read or write.
Oh, you couldn't read or write? Okay.
No.
So would you advocate that upbringing for a child or not?
No, not really. I mean...
But what if they were taught to spell and read and write?
Absolutely.
And that, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you catch up in the end. And it taught me a few kind of techniques, because I changed schools and moved to different countries quite often. So you learn this kind of way of scoping out the system. And
were you terrified going to school when you were 7?
I think I was very ready, other kids.
You wanted to meet other kids?
I did.
So was a lot of your life just you and your sister growing up?
Yes.
And the orangutan, of course?
Yeah. Our parents used to take us into the jungle and lots of amazing adventures. So it was, and you don't know anything else.
You're around adults a lot, right? So you're listening to adult conversations, the two of you are.
Yes, all those idealists and campaigners wanting to save the rainforest and anti-logging.
So it does give you a framework for your life that's very unique.
You kind of brought up to think, anything's possible, but reality might be a bit different.
So where did you go to school that time?
I went to an Australian school in a place called Kota Kinabalu.
Kota Kinabalu, yeah.
In Borneo.
Yeah, which is a very famous holiday, touristy place. Yeah.
But when we moved there, we were the only people out on the islands. So my parents used to have a windsurfer each, put us on the back and sail out, and we'd just be exploring and picking shells. And but now it's just full of tourists and boats and noisy and. And
then, so your art thing, was that cultured in school or from your mother? Or both?
I think you kind of get it intravenously.
The DNA.
And subconsciously.
Yeah.
Like all kids, I like to draw and paint. But as a career, I deliberately kind of stayed away from it. I think I shouldn't really say this, it's really uncool. But to describe who I was as a teenager, I don't know if you've seen Absolutely Fabulous. Mum, she'll kill me for saying this. is a mixture between the two, and I was very much the daughter. You know, I used to wear shirts buttoned up and geeky, and someone who wanted things to be organized and in their place, and, you know, very black and white. And, you know, I did economics and statistics. I think my parents were a bit disappointed. You know, I think my mother she actually got me into art college year after year and saying, you know, you can change degree. But at the end she kind of said, well, someone's got to make the money in the family. So I guess it was okay, but I came full circle. You can't run away from who you really are, or your past, or your
So when
future.
did you leave Southeast Asia, or what was the...
When I was about 12, I was sent to boarding school in the north of England. It was the same school that Jane Eyre went to, and it's the same school that's in Charlotte Bronte, and it's very similar. It hadn't changed much.
What was it? So you suddenly arrive in dreary England, Victorian era.
It was a rainy day, driving through the Lake District, and I think Jason Donovan was on the radio, some really sad song, and all I remember is the raindrops and going, and, you know, tweed itchy uniform that my mother had. She said those skirts are way too long, so she chopped them all off, you know, just above my thigh. So I stood out from day one. That
and were you?
girl.
What was your? Can you remember your mindset? Were you fearful or excited that there was an adventure, or?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you grew up reading about St. Trinian's and all this boarding school and Tom Brown's school days and all that, but the reality is quite different. I wish I'd read Charlotte Bronte before I went.
Was she constantly being referenced?
It was...
Charlotte Bronte wouldn't have done that, I'll tell you. She was a good girl.
No, I mean, it was really... I mean, I would never send my child to boarding school.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people who've been to boarding school say that.
Several of the girls in my year have ended up becoming psychiatrists. And they say there is this whole theory that they do the same thing in a prison service, in boarding schools. The only way to adapt is to break a kid down completely, and then you build up new rules.
Yeah.
It's pretty tough.
Did you do like 5 or 6 years in the boarding school?
Yeah, I did GCSEs and A-levels. But of course it turned out to be quite different, because it's the first place I've encountered racism.
Let's talk about that.
You know, cultural differences. I was the only foreign student in a school of 400, mostly northerners.
So you were considered Asian.
Some people thought I was a princess, you know, misconceptions. People in my dorms would wash the showers down after me because I must be extra dirty, being,
God.
you know, I must have lived in mud huts. There's a lot of misconceptions. And actually the worst was from the teachers. Because I'm half Chinese, they put me into all the top sets for science, maths. I'm not that good, and I
she's from China. She must be smart.
No. Whenever they met me, you're the maths genius.
Yeah. Here, take the violin.
And I'm really, really not.
Yeah.
You know, and quite condescending, and, you know, you're foreign, so you really shouldn't do European languages. So I signed up for Latin and French, and I really regretted it, but I wouldn't not do it.
Did this eventually break down though when they got to know you? Not really. Really? So did you feel isolated for the whole...
A little bit.
Right.
But, you know, as my dad said, you're there for the education, not to make friends.
Wow.
But you know, they had an amazing art department.
This is where you started to making art, or?
Potentially, but the system kind of beat it out of me. They actually had an intervention because I got into art college, but they said to me, do you want to be poor and starving? And so because I was also good at sciences, they more or less forced me to do maths.
But then on the other hand, you have your parents who would have been probably, your mother particularly, saying, no, she's going to do art.
You're kind of isolated from your parents.
Okay, so they don't really have input.
Not really.
So you're what age when you get pushed into, what did you say you did?
16.
Economics and statistics, is that what you said?
At university, yes.
So what university did you go to?
I went to London University.
Okay, so a little bit less racism, I'm sure.
Yes, it was great. It was fantastic. That was, university was amazing. But it's a bit like Roald Dahl, who says the best thing about boarding school is that when you leave it, you just find out the world is so wonderful.
It's funny the thing about racism. When I went to China, I worked in China for about 2 years in Guangzhou, and it was the first time I really understood what racism must be like. There was a very anti-Guilo or white person or whatever the words were. There was quite opaque. Now, I wasn't in any way lacking in privilege and all that sort of stuff. I mean, part of the fact that they didn't like us was because we had that. But you could feel that that you weren't from around these parts and that you weren't that welcome. And I'd never experienced it before. And I thought it was a very valuable lesson I learned. Particularly a lot of, sorry to all my British friends who might be listening to this who were out there at the time, but being Irish, I got a pass a lot of the time because we're not as colonial and as
it's like the Canadians and Americans.
Yes, yeah, and but like some of my English friends were just so, shouty. Like they don't, you don't understand me. I'll shout. That will really help. Yeah,
English.
I'll rub Chinese people's heads because they hate that, but I'll do it because I'm English and I can do everything. And I just found like, what?
I have a quite funny story about that because I have a friend who's half Zimbabwean, half English, and he was sent to China to teach English in a local village. So they think all English people are black, which I think is great.
That is great. So you're down in the London University, and things start getting better then.
Oh, it was great. It went a bit crazy.
Right.
No, I mean, this is...
Crazy how?
This is early 90s. This is
Right.
time of drum and bass and amazing club scene. It was still the time where everyone could afford to live in central London. Made some amazing friends that I'm still friends with, and all kinds of adventures.
So did all the kind of freedom burst out of you and you started trying everything and going mad and doing all that stuff, yeah?
I got it out of my system pretty early.
Okay.
Thank goodness.
And what about the studying bit?
Well, I had to pay foreign fees, so I remember going down Edgware Road and actually going to an Irish pub and saying, please can you teach me how to pull a pint? So I worked for free for a week to kind of learn the ropes. Because I actually got a job at Ministry of Sound.
Right.
Because I lied and I said that I knew how to mix cocktails. So I got the job as the head bartender at the new VIP bar, but I didn't even know how to pull a pint.
So you lasted a day?
No. I mean, I guess perhaps at that time as well, Ministry of Sound people were quite, their expectations of mixed cocktails.
Yeah, it's a plastic cup and it's late at night and you just drink it. Yeah,
it was
you don't need any umbrellas.
It was Red Bull and vodka and a Ribena.
Which is easy.
So that's what I did through university. So I'd finish there at 4 or 5 in the morning and be at lectures by 9.
Wow.
Which is what you can do when you're young.
Of course. Tell me about
sleep.
it. Tell me about it. You graduated?
I did. I
with
did quite well.
A statistics and economics degree. And then what happened?
And then I kind of fell into art-ish again. I worked for a design agency to do their kind of business strategy and to start up a new art label for them.
What year are we now?
1999.
Okay.
That was amazing. At that time I got paid the same as an art director, and I went to exhibitions and.
So you were quite at the epicenter of things in London during the late 90s, yeah.
It was a real time of opportunities. If you had ideas and a bit of energy and guts.
Well, Emin and all these people were breaking out around then, right? And Damien Hirst and even Banksy, that was around the Bristol School and all that stuff. They were all... Yeah,
that was about it's a little bit before. But it was a great time for kind of graphic design. Anything was possible, and being young and was an okay thing then.
Had your mother moved back to Norway at this stage?
Yes, she had.
So would you travel back and forth from London to Norway much, or did you just stay there?
I stayed in. Often with big cities, you kind of get stuck, and you get stuck often within zones 1 and 2.
Yeah.
You get swallowed up by
were,
the city.
Were you? I'm just intrigued about how your parents. At this stage, you're now doing very well, and you're a grown woman, and you're doing well. What were they? You don't have to say if you don't. I'm sure your mom. Hello, Mum, if you're listening. But what do you think they were looking at you as? Were they proud of you? Do they think, oh, girl's done well?
I guess they're happy when you're out the house and you can take care of yourself. But I think they've always wondered a bit. I've always been a bit here, there, and everywhere, and doing lots of projects. And my mum did a painting of me when I was 12, a self-portrait of what she thought I looked like. She's an abstract artist, and it's actually a big red blob on something that looks like a skateboard, because she never knows where I'm going or what I'm doing.
Okay.
I think that's...
When you were 12 she did this?
Yes. It's very prophetic. I'm still skating around.
Yeah. So now you're in your late 20s kind of thing, I suppose? Was there a moment that you went, okay, I've got to change again? Or what
I
was
did,
it?
because I got really freaked out by the art world. There was a lot of people in velvet hairbands, and
Did you
a
feel it
little
was
bit of-
bullshit?
I have this kind of bullshit alarm, and I was pretty inexperienced. I went to meetings and people report back to my boss and say, Evian runs through her veins. So I think I was a bit too naive and innocent, and I could feel myself being eaten up by it. So I decided to go back to what my degree kind of had taught me. So then I got into the graduate management training scheme for British Telecom.
Cheekers.
So
That's a jump.
I know I hope this isn't too confusing.
No, I love it. That's exactly the people I want to talk to.
It's all over the place.
Yeah, it's great.
And you kind of wonder if there ever was a plan. But I think the plan is to take each chapter for what it is, and you learn something at the end of each, hopefully.
So you were going to British Telecom graduate training to do statistics or something?
Well, I was brought in on this program where they're supposed to train, the future top management at British Telecom. And I tried to keep my head low and, out of too much trouble and just, learn the trade. Most of the managers come from, they've been engineers and they've worked their way up through the ranks. So suddenly a 20-year-old coming in as a junior manager was
problematic.
So there's a few tests I had to do. So I know how to climb a telephone pole and stuff like that. I've done those engineer courses. But I was then put in a new media division. This was when everyone was investing in all kinds of internet startups. And so, my first job was to manage a sales team.
It just feels so incongruous.
Which was the worst.
It feels like something your dad would have told you to do, and you go, I don't want to do this anymore.
But it was, it was really exciting times.
Yeah.
At that time, British Telecom have an amazing research lab in Bexley. Really amazing shit that they've
So
developed.
we're now at the dawn of the internet. Is that right?
There was a lot of stuff being developed.
We're modems.
But nothing went to market. They had fibre then. I don't know if I can say this,
Yeah.
but they didn't want to roll it out. So I did all these costing plans for the future.
Or British Telecom, imagine what you might have done if you had.
Yeah, so, and I think seeing all these amazing opportunities and working with a big company like that's quite incumbent, because they'd invested in lots of internet companies and they used me as they sent me in. They're like, find out what it's all about and what we can do with them. We just spent X million buying them up. We haven't got a clue what we're going to do. So I had to report back, but then everyone thought I was kind of a spy, because when I'd go to our invested company, they think she's here to spy on us. And
she's here to cut jobs.
And then when I came back to British Telecom, they're like, she's joined the other side. So I guess I always end up being a bit of an outsider, but I think it's good to stand on the outside with a bit of a different perspective.
Did you spend long with British Telecom?
2 years. I jumped off ship before my program was finished, and I went over to a company called Excite.
Okay. Oh, we all remember Excite. Whatever happened to them?
We're actually having a reunion in London in November.
So Excite were, for some of the younger listeners, at the time of, actually before Google, it was basically, what were they? Ask Jeeves, Excite and Yahoo were the three main...
Those were the three search engines.
Yeah,
and
search
we
engines.
should have
And Webcrawler, that was another one.
I still can't use Yahoo. It's still very slow.
I'm still surprised Yahoo is still going after all the missteps they've taken through the years.
Yeah, no, so it was, and that was great. You were inventing web pages and advertising models, and being an American company, they had access to all this dodgy statistics, I guess. Huge databases.
What happened after Excite? As if that wasn't enough excitement.
Well, I think with every job you learn what you're not good at and what you like to learn more about. And I guess we were working with a lot of ad agencies, and I was managing a lot of their campaigns and their banners. And I thought, I'd like to get more creative. There's more we can do than banners and text links. So then I went agency side, and then I went to join Wheel Group.
Right.
And then suddenly I was managing entertainment clients. So I had Warner Music account and Buena Vista. So doing lots of PR and online.
PR for the big blockbusters and all that stuff. Okay, that was exciting. So you're now kind of getting
Lots
back close to... Yeah, you're getting back close to the earlier time when you first were first in the art world.
It's... I was always asking myself, why am I doing it? What is it about advertising? But it's about finding out how people think, tell stories in different ways, and reach people and convince them and sell them something convincingly. So it's really understanding where people are at. What are they concerned about? Having your finger on whatever's going on out there.
Yeah.
And I think although advertising is a bit of a shady, dark place, there is a lot of communication going on.
That was my big problem. You always try and self-justify. If you're selling cigarettes, You go, well, people don't have to smoke.
No.
Yeah, but you don't have to make them. You know, I mean, everyone who's got a kind of a job that's got questionable ethics always manages to find a way of saying, well, it's not me. Well, no one asked me. Well, I'm just doing my job. I think when I kind of flamed out of advertising, it was because I started just continually questioning the low, grubby nature of the business. You know, at the start I was all full of the joy. It's going, I'm going to make great funny ads.
And people believe it.
Yeah. And then you work for Be Real.
And then I took a year off because there was a huge, or 2 years off actually, there was a huge internet bubble.
Boom, bust, yep.
And then everyone's doing same old, and I thought, no, you know, I'd like to try something new. But I took a year out, I went surfing.
Where?
I started in...
Wait now, were you a good surfer?
This is the funny thing, because
Right.
I started in Sydney. And me being me, you know, I hate not doing anything or being productive. So I signed up for film course, I had an assistant job in documentary. It was brilliant because I got as a gift lessons at surf school. But I was a real city girl going, oh my God, sitting in a van, people with dreadlocks going, oh my God, what am I doing? This really isn't for me. But it's the only thing I've ever done. I just got up on the board and started surfing. Someone came up to me and I was surfing and went, oh, I like your style. You know, how long have you been surfing for? I went,
3 hours.
About an hour and a half. And it was fantastic.
Why do you think you were able to do that? Because it's really hard.
I have no clue. I'm really not especially sporty or anything. So that was really, it was so much fun.
Did you love Sydney when you went there?
Sydney's a fun place, but I find there's something about, and perhaps that's kind of growing up in the colonies and growing up in London, you know, where the world kind of comes together. Sydney's a beautiful place. People are lovely and the lifestyle's great. But I always feel we have some kind of responsibility as someone living in the world. And there it was, everyone's dressed in white and, you know, it's a bit, what's that, Truman Show?
Yeah.
And that scared me a bit. I didn't understand how, and it has a history not that long ago of quite racist behaviour.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
well, you would have been there around the John Howard, the Cooperative thing, where we were. Well, it's a very activist-led place though as well. I mean, the Australians are pretty good
on, you know,
on a lot of issues like that,
gay issues and all, you know.
Yeah.
But not refugees and race issues. And I had a lot of discussions. Maybe it's sorry to my Australian friends, but you know, I talk about multiculturalism, and it would always start with, "But look at our food."
Yeah.
And the food is culture, but we're talking about people. You know, how often at that time you didn't see a lot of mixed race. Chinese would stick to Chinese, Indians to Indians.
I mean, Sydney, when you go outside the white belt or whatever you want to call the privileged belt, I mean, Blacktown and Campbelltown, there's all ghettos from all over the world.
And being, you know, mixed race myself, I felt it, you know, but of course I had a great time and I enjoyed it. But
just talk about that mixed race issue. Where did you feel at this stage of your life that you were as a person? Did you feel you were?
I've always felt, maybe till recently, most Malaysian, but as you become, you know, I'm female, I'm not Muslim, I look more European, I don't speak Malay, so it's very hard for me to integrate.
But I guess from the very start of your life, you've always had this probably ingrained ability to understand. Like when you talked about when you first went to school in England, the way you were treated, you were like, what the hell is this? So you were able to see it from a kind of a minority point of view, yeah? I
guess I've always been quite lucky because it's quite hard to pin down what I look like. And it's great fun because then no one puts me in a box. And I guess in England, not being British, I didn't have to join in the class silliness that exists there.
Which is terribly silly. Terribly silly.
but it really stops. Great people could be doing great things together, but they won't because one reads The Guardian and one reads The Telegraph.
Yeah.
It's that basic.
More than, say, me, you would have a kind of a trigger, maybe even a subconscious trigger of being much more, I think, aware of stuff before I might. You know, someone calls an Irish a paddy or make me kind of laugh it off and say, yes, we'll just go and have another 9 pints and get drunk, like a cliche. I mean, even that time in Australia, I remember they were trying to get Seaniebee going and they were trying to get an apology to Aboriginals for stolen generation, etc., all the way back 200 years. And John Howard said, well, I didn't do it.
No.
And I'm going, John, we know you didn't do it. You're just the Prime Minister. You're a figurehead. But of course, they're paranoid that the Aussies, the Aborigines, if you give them an apology, they'll start suing you. And, you know, terribly
things are much better
anti-human.
Now. You know, they're ish. Well, they've got some interesting parliamentary.
I think they're probably better for Aboriginal communities than they have been in a while, driven by Aussie. I mean, I have an Aussie passport, so
You do?
I'm Australian. I can speak the next bit of this in Australian if you like, but they have been really, I think, found wanting with immigration and all that kind of stuff.
I haven't been back once I left it was...
I mean, there's a nice segue here to Norway and Australia, because there was, around the time you were there, was the oil tanker that picked people up, which was a Norwegian tanker. And I mean, Norway has a pretty good, and maybe this is a myth, a pretty good, in my mind, brand image as a very squeaky clean, fair, interested in peace and people being fair to each other. May not be true, but the Tampa was the boat that was caught with refugees coming from Indonesia, and the Aussies wouldn't let it move.
We're very charitable abroad, but if that tanker came to Norway, I'm not sure if the Norwegians would let them in.
Really? Ah, interesting.
We have this. It's called the goodness paradox, but our goodness myth. We're known as this amazingly charitable, social, democratic country. Equal rights, and everything is just so good here, and we're such good people. And I guess Norway spends per capita more money on aid, which is a great statistics, but then you look internally, we should be taking in many more immigrants than we do. We have this huge country, but we don't. I haven't checked my facts, but it's disgraceful how few immigrants we take in. Everything's okay in Norway as long as you follow the rules. And this is more about kind of society control. Government doesn't need to be that controlling, because society itself, there's this unspoken Lutheran, thou shalt not think you are more special or more different than anyone else. It's fantastic as long as you fit into the mold, the traditional 2-kid family with a cottage, and that's wonderful. But the idea of being different is quite challenging here, which also leads to something that's not very well known, is that we have a huge heroin problem in Norway. We have problems with local council funding, we have underfunded schools, we actually have enough kindergarten spaces. There is free healthcare, but if you do have a serious illness, certain cancers, if the medicine's too expensive,
Tough.
Our government is also changing. The current government is very, right wing, and very to privatization and capital globalism, and it's scary.
Join the club.
But luckily we've got an election coming up now, and I really do.
You think there'll be change? So you've taken your 2 years off. You've just stepped on a surfboard, and you're brilliant at that. And you're in Sydney. Then what was the next jump?
I met someone at surf school who had inherited a Mercedes convertible from an ex-East End convict. So we had to take care of this car, so we went on a road trip down the coast to Brisbane. And then I just hopped around, I went to Samoa and did the kind of route, South America, Central America.
Brilliant.
And I decided that for once in my life I wasn't going to live according to a time schedule. At the moment I have an alarm that goes off, 4 or 5 times a day for different appointments, when you have to get up, when you've got to go to sleep, all those things. It wasn't easy, actually. It sounds like, oh, how fantastic, but you're so used to the rat race. It took me a good 2 months to kind of get into being a real slob. I know.
There was a person on the podcast who said to me that we're a similar vintage, that we only have 30 summers left. Didn't mean it negatively, but said we only really think about it when we have 15. And the last 5 are going to be shit anyway.
Is that timeline? Have you seen that drawn timeline?
No.
It's actually very scary when you look at it. Out of a timeline of 80 years, the first 10 are fun, the last 10 are fun, and everything in between is work. It's this idea.
I wouldn't even say the last 10 are fun. The last 5 of the last 10 are probably fun, but
most people you get something. Body's still working.
Yeah.
But it's pretty scary, and that working stage, we're halfway through that. So 30 years is it's precious.
Well, I didn't have children or get married for that reason, because I felt a huge reason why everyone is working all that time is because kids are expensive blighters, and I know you have a child and they're great.
It wasn't planned,
but you know what I mean. Once you have responsibility for another person, you have to shod, clothe, house, feed, and that takes money. Where are you going to get money from? The only reason I think we need to work is to get money, and if you have enough money, then you shouldn't work. It would be my kind of rather radical approach to things. But or you should do something that's not. When I say work for money, or work for a company, or work for the traditional 9 to 5.
You got to pay the bills.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you've experienced it talking to people that you talk to. Is if you it sounds so simplistic, but if you genuinely do what you like and you stick at it,
comes.
It actually comes, and you end up having work which doesn't feel like work.
Yeah.
And I really do believe it. I hope so, because that's what I'm trying to do now.
Well, you'll probably be episode 59 of this, and I've been doing it for over a year, and I haven't. No money's come, but I really love it. And to me, it's given me a purpose, and I enjoy meeting people like you. And I've just, arrived in Norway, and we were linked up by mutual friend, and here we are talking.
But you really have to come back, and we have to take you to some other places.
Well, I want to go back up to Nyksund and that area and see that northern lights and stuff. So I might come back
But culturally, it's really amazing, because it exchanges a lot more to the north and to the east towards Baltic and Russia. The whole kind of the way people are.
Yeah.
There has a long tradition of kind of spoken word and stories, and lots of music, it's it really has a lot of kind of unique culture, I guess. One of the things people say about Oslo, and I don't know if and I come from Bergen, so anyone listening from Oslo go, oh, it's so biased, but it lacks an identity. Yeah, there's no one thing distinct that kind of you feel when you think or walk through Oslo.
Yeah, I've been here a week, and I think, it feels. I've been to Sweden, and it feels similar. I mean, there is a civilized. I call it civilized. Like, there's very little graffiti, and it's probably your box thing. Everyone feels like they're nice, and as long as you're nice, we're nice, and there's no one gonna. Like in Ireland, you could be picked on by some drunk and have a fight before you can say knife, and there's menace, and that's just Dublin.
Oh, that.
That
happens here too.
Does it? So you did your round the world. Did you go up a hill and come down a mountain?
I learned to take it a bit easy. That the rat race wasn't that important.
I'd like to talk about that, because that's the one thing that a lot of older people in my life have said, why aren't you still working? You could be having a 6-figure job, and you could be head of this.
I think it's more because you have to justify their choice. They're doing it. They're like, how come he doesn't have to do what we're doing? Isn't he an adult? I know the biggest lesson is, and it's the hardest thing to do, is to be honest, not just to other people, but to yourself.
Yeah.
And if you can really, really do that, I think you suddenly realize what you want to do and what you love doing. But
I think that's a very good point. No one said it like that to me before, because I think for me, for a long number of years, it was a quest to see how high up a greasy pole I could climb. And I knew it was a greasy pole, because all around me people were sliding down it.
But there were expectations, and you're young, you're competitive, you want to succeed, you want to take part, and there's with everything there's rules and systems, and you're just joining it. But then suddenly you realise, hey, there are.
Well, you're working in New York from 9 o'clock in the morning till 10:30 or 11 at night, and no one's going to say, oh, Sean was great, he used to work 11 hours a day. And then you go, what am I doing? I'm making an ad for a razor blade. Big deal, like big whoop-de-doo, And I look at all the talent in the ad business and related business, and I go, the amount of ideas and the amount of intelligence that's being burned. It's being burned on pap. Yeah. And I've tried with some agencies to say, what if we got 9 people and sent them to Africa as part of a thing that we did for our own do-goody thing, and we came up with 100 ideas that cost less than $1, and then some other company that makes these things on a lathe says, well, we make that one, and then suddenly you can make a movement that fixes some problems that you look at them and go, how the hell can we not get food to people, that we have mountains of it somewhere? It's a transport problem. We get some trucks or something. We have loads of trucks, and I just ended up getting all.
Which is why I kind of feel, I don't know if it's idealistic, but I kind of feel that those ideas can be done more in a creative art sphere.
Yeah.
That there's more allowance to do things differently, and today art kind of goes into community projects and social aspects and alternative economies, and that's what I'm hoping for.
I think I can smell that starting to happen a little bit, because there's no doubt that technology and our connectedness means people can there's a great Dublin thing of, that'll never happen. Don't bother your arse, just have a pint. People with ideas are not as tamped down, tall poppy in Australia. Getting above your station. You're allowed to do that, and you're encouraged to do it. You'll find someone who'll encourage you pretty quickly.
They say creativity is kind of the next currency. Or I read about a study today, which is a bit worrying because these trend analysts, they're saying that today you can see a rich person buy the plastic surgery they have, the watch and the handbag they have. Yeah. But the next generation is investing in education and culture and experiences. So if that then becomes exclusively for the rich, that would be really sad. Yeah. But I think it's going that way.
We hope so. You got back from your tour to Norway? Is that what
I got back. I got back from Mexico City back to London and started interviewing for jobs. And I decided, no, I'm not ready. I'm not ready for this, or to grow up, or to go back into the rat race. So I decided to move to New York. And this is maybe another cultural thing, because in London I was actually trying to get it into film production. And people say, you don't want to do that. Do you know how many years you'll be poor? Oh, it's just not worth it. Yeah. It's so horrendous. Do you want to run around for other people and shit productions and bad music videos? I said, why not? But it was so negative. And the first day I got to New York, I said, oh, I'd like to work in film production. They'd go, oh my God, are you a film producer? That's amazing. That's so cool.
Right.
And that was really, really kind of encouraging. You can just...
I agree with that about it.
So then I was basically advised to go to a club where some old film directors used to meet. It's called The Office in Soho. I drank for 11 hours.
Yeah, good girl.
And I got a job.
Great.
And it started there, so then I worked...
Echoes of the old Ministry of Sound situation.
I think you just jump into the unknown and
so you became a producer?
Yes, so I worked both on reality TV shows for ITV, from Room Raiders to My Dream Treehouse.
Hap of a different type.
Yes, but I also got to work on independent indie short films with some great kind of female producers called Street Pictures. And then I worked in an Irish pub in Wall Street to make my money.
You had experience from that, from the Edgware Road?
It was crazy. It was.
Did you not find that New York, though, is just this kind of echo chamber, breaks you down hard, a dormitory town almost, just with stuff built for the people who are sleeping there, kind of thing?
It was changing at the time, and I guess they say, when anyone comes to a city, it becomes their city and their story. And New York City is a place that everyone has these amazing stories, and my trip was, I'd run out of money and I was sitting outside a brownstone going, what am I going to do? And someone came along and said, here's $50. Go speak to Shauna at that bar and she'll get you a job and pay me back. Wow. And it just started from there. Lots of random amazing things. Yeah.
My observation in New York when I was there, and I was there for, I think, too long. I was there for about 4 years, is that they say, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, but I think you can make it anywhere without having to make it there.
No, it's tough. It teaches you that you really need to know what you're about, otherwise you get swallowed up.
Yeah, and spat out in my case.
No, it's really unforgiving, and I did leave New York quite exhausted.
Yeah.
But you meet these amazing people.
What year did you leave New York?
2002 to 2004.
Okay. And then where did you go?
Back to London, back home. I always keep on going back to London. Do
you consider London your spiritual home kind of thing, or? I mean, you said earlier you consider yourself Malaysia as your country.
It took me a long time to kind of divorce myself from London, so I can't say that anymore. Okay. I moved from London in 2010, and things are so awful there now. Really, the same things that you say about New York, I'd say are true about London now. Yeah. It's so
What has it lost in your mind?
It's lost that genuine melting pot of people, both culturally and diverse backgrounds. It really is a place where you can only really survive if you're very rich. And that's like zones 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yeah. And that never used to be the case.
It's sad. I agree with you.
There's no artists working in central London anymore unless you're one of the big ones with an art factory. You really feel it.
So was the next major step you getting involved in art?
Well, then I continued to work for agencies, because you often do what you know best.
Yes.
And
To earn a crust.
especially after the crazy days in New York, I kind of thought I just want to settle down a little bit. Then I got pregnant. And, having a kid, set in different reality. You can't just pack your bags and go. But at that time, I had already bought this property in North Norway. But as you say...
Okay, so that's what I'm interested in. What part of you then said, I feel I need to go back to Norway, and why?
Well, I was living in London, and every summer I go back to the north of Norway where my family come from.
Yeah.
I work on projects there. We run festivals, and it's a very kind of spontaneous place where someone will come along, some instruments, or we'll just make an exhibition. So there's this really fantastic energy in this place. People come and invest, and you just see this kind of gentrification that was happening.
But in a good way or a bad way? Because gentrification is usually a bad way.
It was very traumatic because there's not a lot of space, a lot of different interests, and more so in a small isolated place, people have to work together. That's what's great about it, and again, I love that idea of just different people coming together. But suddenly there's not enough space for everyone to do what they want to do. So if we're having a loud festival with people playing music or projecting in all the buildings...
keep the noise down!
Yeah, because someone's got some tourists.
Right.
And how do you make room for that? And of course, money wins out. People with money can invest.
Yeah.
And often they want to recoup their investments, and they go very commercial. And so over time, more and more of the creative kind of people have been kind of pressed out. So there was one building left, and it suddenly was up for sale. And I didn't have the money for it, and I thought, my God. But I thought, yes, I'm going to buy it. But somehow I think it was fate. So I've, in parallel with this building in North Norway, I'm very interested in seaweed.
Oh.
Anything that's...
Big in Ireland, west coast of Ireland. Dilsk, we call it.
Yeah, and you have a bread made of seaweed as well, and flour, and I'm really into sustainable kind of food production.
Living,
Exactly, and I think we need to. I forage, so I find stuff on the shoreline, and I fish for fish and dry seaweed, and love it.
Great.
And and it's playing. It's like you did as a kid.
Yeah.
You'd be on the beach chopping up seaweed, pretending you had a restaurant, but now I actually eat it and make seaweed for all my guests all the time. I'm really trying to campaign that seaweed is just another sea vegetable that you can...
It's hovering. Well, we just had a little break because you can probably hear there's a helicopter buzzing overhead, so apologies for that. At least it's not a drone, it's quite high in the sky, and I hope it's not looking for us, but we're going to persevere without it. So the seaweed project is part of a grander scheme of things. I just want to talk formally about the Nyksund project. It's a combined working space, and it's a cooperative movement that you're trying to galvanize the local people mainly.
It's actually both contextually working with local issues, local people, but bringing in designers, artists, so that they can kind of meet and work together, or alone. I think we need these open, free spaces. We can create kind of new cities, but we don't have to be in the same place, in a sense, and communities. And this space is just one of many others. Yeah, we need free spaces that are a bit free from art policy and funding.
Is this your end game? Career-wise, is this where, after all the travels, have you found a...
I don't believe that life is that linear.
Yeah, I know, but does it feel like a kind of
I hope
an
so.
anchor?
I hope it's going to be a bit of a base that I can then exchange and build on. Finally something more stable and permanent for myself, yes.
You've travelled all over the world, you've had so many different jobs, you've been brave enough to knock ones on the head and take on new challenges. What would you say, looking back to the young girl who was going into boarding school or coming out of boarding school?
I would say don't take things too seriously. Don't take it too personally. And it sounds a bit trivial, but it's so important to have fun. Yeah. I think the older you get, the more you realise that those so-called innocent, childish things like fun and playing, it's so important. And being with nice people, I don't have those ambitions to be top dog and boss and winner. And because I've interviewed a few people, because I've asked what's it like being on the top. And everyone's waiting for someone to stab them in the back and the compromises they have to do. So I'd rather work in the middle in good projects with lovely people and have fun.
That's a great place to finish up, May. That was a brilliant conversation. I didn't expect that at all.
Oh.
I didn't expect that at all. It was fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on Pint with Seaniebee. I will put a link to the project website, which is in development at the moment.
It is, but it will be. Yes, I've got to make a web page. So
Yeah.
I will. That's great motivation.
And anyone who wants more information can contact me at my email address, which will be at the end. Thank you so much. It was a brilliant conversation, and the best of luck with the rest of your life.
And you too.
Thank you.